Hello there, it's Sandy Allnock here for Ellen Hudson. I am coloring all the things. And in this card today, I'm going to be using some new art impression stamps. This is an Easter set, and there's something super special about them. There are artist bunnies in the set. There are two of them. One of them has a paint can and the other has brushes. And they're helping the other bunnies to get their eggs all decorated for Easter. So how much fun is that going to be? I got out a whole mess of Copic markers so I could color these bunnies, and I'll show you how to color some bunnies that look like they're white. I'm using a little stronger colors than most people might want, so I'm just going to warn you about that ahead of time because you might not want to do that much color. But I'm going to start with a W5, and it's easiest for you to see what I'm doing when I use stronger contrast here on the video, but you can also use lighter colors to do this. Usually I start with my lightest color first, but in this particular case, when I'm going to be coloring white, I want to work toward a W00 and then push that toward completely having no color in there. And if I were to put the W00 down first, I would be tempted to keep adding more colors as I'm doing my blending. If I just put down a little bit of the W5 first, and then blend it with some W2 and some 00, that's going to hopefully help me to keep from taking over the entire thing with too much gray. That is my hope. It doesn't always work, but that is the theory behind trying to do it this way. Now, sometimes though, in a circumstance like this, I get some splotchy areas, and I'm just going to go over it real quick with a flick, kind of doing a lifting up of the marker, so that I end up getting as few strokes as possible for that last pass with the W2, and that will tend to even out some of that fussiness from over scrubbing. And that's what causes that mottling, M-O-T-T-L-I-N-G, is scrubbing too hard and too much. And sometimes we just tend to do that because we're like really trying hard to blend. And in a situation like this, there's not a lot of room for doing the blending. And you end up having to do like a lot of little fussy scrubbing, and you get a weird texture to it. So on each one of those, that's what I'm going to do because I want to get rid of that texture. It's not there yet because I'm still just working with the W2. But the reason some of that mottling appears is because when you use a really light color, I think of it as these light colors having a lot of colorless blender in them. And that's sort of what makes them lighter. I don't know if that's scientifically true, but as soon as I start doing that, it eats away at the color that's already there. But if I can go back in over top of this wet paper and throw in a really quick flicking of the W2, it tends to just smooth everything out nicely. So there's your little tip for today, is trying to get rid of that little weird texture that shows up. Now each one of these has the shading on the left side. This bunny on the right ends up having the shading on his face because the light is still coming from the same place. Just because you don't want the shading to be on his face doesn't mean that's not where the sun is. Like, the sun's still going to be shining where the sun is shining. So be aware of that when you're trying to figure out where your shading is going to go, which side, so that you end up consistent across the whole picture, that everything has the shading on whichever side you choose. So the bunnies are just about done. There's a little part I forgot on that last bunny. Can you see it? He has a little butt that has no color on it. I didn't realize that until it was just about done, and added that so that then his little tail will show up nicely. And then the rest of this is just going to be adding a bunch of happy colors. Now I debated what to do with the painted eggs. And that, by that I mean the ones that are in the basket that the little bunny's holding. And I debated whether they should be white eggs so that they were like he's standing in line waiting for his turn to have his eggs painted. And I decided I wanted more color over there, so I just painted them anyway. So maybe the little bunny is going to paint designs on them instead. And that's the story I'm telling myself. A lot of times when I'm doing my coloring, I do tell myself weird stories. I name the characters, you know, whatever it takes to get me through something and entertain myself while I'm doing my coloring. Yeah, I'm weird that way. I chose a couple different browns for this because I felt like it needed a punch of some dark color, just a little tiny bit, not a ton. And I chose to make the brushes a really dark color, and then added a mid-tone brown for the basket with a little bit of the darker color to shade with it. And that sort of ties all those darks together. And then throwing in some cool grays. The cool grays are, of course, in contrast to the warm grays. The warm ones were used on the bunnies, so the rest of the shading in this can be the kind of cooler colors. And then I wanted to add some happy to it, so I added like grasses and stuff to it. I love YG03. It's like my favorite light green. It's the one that I use the most, I think. I probably re-ink this more than anything. And it blends nicely with a YG00 for a lighter color. And there's also 000 and 000, and you can, go as light as you wish. And I'm just going to add a flood of color around the bunnies and let it slowly fade out, so there's kind of a vignette all around the image. And then I have to add some shading underneath of them for grasses so that there's something for them to stand on. And what I find is that if they have a foot in the air, like that bunny in the back, one of his feet's up in the air and one of his feet's on the ground, then the one on the ground gets the grass under it and the other one is above the grass, and then it looks like he's got his foot lifted up. So each one of these has grasses beside it, so I decided to make some grass edges for them. Just little flicks of the marker, and then it's not just having these big old kind of shapes for shadows. It has a little more character to it to have grasses sticking up from them. So I'll get a little bit of grasses here and there. I'll put in a few horizontal lines as well because I felt like everything was starting to look like it was going weirdly vertical, and then added a little bit of shading to try to smooth some of that out and join some of those shapes together. My last thing was I decided to try adding some shading, and I could go in with a darker blue and a darker pink and a darker yellow to do that, or I can just use some of the tea colors. These are toner grays. I'm using a 4 and a 2. And if you end up doing that and the color gets weird, just run over it with one more coat of the pink or the blue on top of it. And it just saves you trying to find other colors to blend with. So on my card, I just used a couple layers of paper for the backer on the picture and then popped it on some dimensional adhesive. And there we go. There's my card for this time. I hope you enjoyed this. Click the like button, share it with your friends if you'd like. The supplies are in the doobly-doo and over on Ellen's blog today. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.